DW AfricaLink.
2 years ago, Kenyan youth achieved what few thought possible. They stopped a government in its tracks. They organized, marched, and stormed parliament, compelling the withdrawal of a finance bill that had pushed millions to the brink. The victory, however, came at a steep cost. Dozens killed, hundreds injured. To this day, not a single security officer has faced criminal prosecution for those deaths. As Kenya approaches the second anniversary of those protests on June 25th, the victims' families are still waiting, still demanding answers, still haunted by the same painful question: will justice ever come?
Those people who saw the cameras that recorded the officer who killed Rex Masai, something changed during the court last week. At 1 minute, they agreed and they said that the video that was presented to them by, was it journalists, was admissible in court. We had to do a whole film was done, Blood Parliament. And it's an OSINT kind of a documentary where they pick readily information out there, videos, and they show face for face, they triangulate, they reveal these facial IDs. But the courts are apathetic to our issues as Kenya. The judiciary is captured, the executive is captured, and the National Police Service is captured.
That's what's coming up. Welcome to AfricaLink, the podcast that connects you to the stories that matter across Africa. I'm Lucy Riley, your host for today.
AfricaLink, every weekday here on DW.
Let's dive in. This year's anniversary will look markedly different from the last. Instead of street demonstrations, organizers are urging a nationwide stay-at-home protest, a quieter yet intentional act of remembrance and resistance. President Ruto has announced a reparations framework pledging compensation for nearly 2,000 victims of protest-related abuses. He frames this as a state acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Yet, critics question whether compensation, absent criminal accountability, can truly be called justice. Today, we're asking what this anniversary means, whether Kenya's Gen Z movement has achieved its goals, and if the state is genuinely committed to accountability. To help us unpack these questions, I'm joined by Beatrice Waithera, activist and convener of the Red Vests movement, one of the key civil society groups at the forefront of demands for justice. Also with us is DW's correspondent Andrew Wasike, who has been following developments on the ground in Nairobi. Andrew, there are planned protests for this Thursday, June 25th, to commemorate the lives lost during the 2024 Gen Z protests. What is the general feeling among young people in Kenya?
Thank you very much, Lucy. So yes, I was there. I covered the protest extensively. And what strikes me is that the mood is very different from where it was in 2024. There is a lot of anger, but there is also calls for remembrance. This is what we are seeing and what you just mentioned. So many people have turned to social media, where there have been calls for memorial marches, candlelit vigils, and other people also want just peaceful processions to honor those who died during the protests. What has also changed, I would say, in 26 is that their kind of activism, I'm talking about the Gen Z, has matured. In 2024, much of the energy was focused on stopping the finance bill. But today, as I speak to you, Lucy, the conversation is much broader. Young people are talking about accountability. Still, we have got cases of police reform. We are under President William Ruto's government. So there are questions about governance, corruption, and even voter mobilization ahead of the elections next year in August.
Thank you for painting that picture, Andrew, and we'll talk more about the mobilization later. Wanjeri, 2 years on from the June 2024 Gen Z protests, Families are still demanding justice for loved ones killed during demonstrations. From your vantage point, has Kenya really made any meaningful progress on accountability?
Thank you, Lucy and Andrew. There is no accountability. What we have is President Ruto burying his head under the sun, avoiding the conversation. And when pushed, he uses the other arm into civil society, that is a constitutional office, the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, to reach out to activists, reach out to all the affected families. But once they collect this information from us, I'm actually a victim of the government brutality and abduction in between July 17th and 19th. I suffered chest complications after the tear gassing on June 20th all the way to June 25th during the Occupy Assembly. So looking into all this, and these are documented cases, I do not see a willing president. We're ready to have a national conversation with people, with the youth, and ask them, yes, I know you're the majority in demographics in Kenya, and there is unemployment in this country. And yes, you came out in the streets to defend yourselves because the economy has been tough. He is not willing to push that conversation, and he's not willing to take responsibility. So as a result, we move now into questioning what happened in 2025. And before you can even talk about 2025, the deaths of Albert Ojwang, there has been about 4 other more deaths documented in the last 1 month and a half in 2026 about people that died in police cells. That was freshly and immediately after the fuel prices demonstrations. So there's a whole lot of, it's a whole continuum, and it's issues from social issues, accountability issues, economic issues, political issues. And yes, we can't keep now avoiding the political conversation. We are involving ourselves directly. And we were behind a campaign called Tuko Kadi, Niko Kadi, moving around the country and mobilizing within our bases, asking the youth to not be apathetic towards politics of the day, and that in 2027, it's going to be a decisive moment for us. It's unsettling.
Beatrice, you've touched on very many things, and I'm very sorry to hear the experience that you went through yourself. And, you've been at the forefront of these discussions. Last year's anniversary protests saw further killings, like you've already mentioned. This year, organizers are calling for a stay-at-home protest. This is somewhat suggesting a shift in tactics. What does that tell us about how Kenyans are navigating the tension between their constitutional right to protest and the very real fear of state violence?
All right, thank you for this question. And it's quite within what I do, that is movement building with the communities. Back in 2024, we organized ourselves in very discreet ways. For people that were not familiar with spaces like X Spaces and with emerging tools like Zello, there was a bit of disconnection between older generations who were not apt with technology. So while we organized, I remember we didn't give any notification to the police in either of the counties. What we had was a bit different again from what we used to do between 2018 and 2020 before the lockdown by COVID. We used to organize in ways that would have simultaneous actions. When a comrade in Kisumu, our point person there is called Boniface Akach, a very vocal guy, and he was also abducted towards the onset and the beginning of 2024 protest in 2025. He's also nursing injuries, and he's unwell. He's been going through surgeries, lots of surgeries because of that. He will do action. Another entity led by people from Uhuru, like Francis Ouma, will be organizing Mombasa, and we had Turkana, and that's how we used to do it. We had Nakuru, organized by Tribeless Youth. So it was different movements, different entities, different organizations, different individuals calling for action. And then now it became platform-based, and we had to mobilize ourselves discreetly in ways that Ruto had to come into one of the X spaces on X, formerly Twitter, to try and speak to us. And that's where the first faction of the Gen Z and youth movement started now becoming diluted. So with the public order management bill, they have looked for ways to hunt us organizers and activists. Sometimes they will arrest one of the most arrested person, at least twice a week he has to be arrested, is Julius Kamau. And Julius Kamau was very important towards the tipping off of the 2024 protest because he stood in a court of law and lectured the court, and that fueled the anger. And that was the tipping point that we were all waiting for to actually get the confidence. And I remember the likes of Wanjira coming out to say the fear is gone. So the fear is gone, but we've had to go back and reinvent ways. Most of the emerging faces and voices during 2024 protests were amalgamated within our movement. They found spaces and we welcomed them.
Beatrice, you've talked about how fear is now gone, and you've raised an important question about concerns of abductions in the country and how between 2018 and 2020, you had to mobilize yourselves discreetly, and you talked of tools such as Xelo and X Spaces. And we also have activists such as Boniface Mwangi claiming that he led some of these protesters or Gen Z movement, and the Gen Zs themselves have talked about being leaderless and tribeless. But then there's this other issue where government allied leaders are now claiming these anniversary protests are opposition sponsored. How damaging is that narrative to the legitimate grievances of Gen Z? And does it reflect a deliberate strategy to delegitimize protest movements in Kenya?
Boniface Mwangi has a very strong presence in activism in Kenya. But I keep saying the good one is not yet born. I keep on saying that because what happened in 2024, what happened in 2025 was larger than life, was larger than Boniface Mwangi, was larger than me. But the effects of the work that Boniface Mwangi did with the first Occupy Assembly back, I think, in 2008, and I think there was about two of them. I was barely 14 years old, 15 years old, so I may not know much. I cannot deny the fact that he has that presence that instilled the confidence for the youth to get out there. But at one point, I remember he was slapped along I&M, and he was beaten, roughed up, because he was said to bring stands that were not in line with what we had been organizing online. So did we organize ourselves effectively? Yes. Were some of us a bit naive? I would not say we were naive. We were brave enough to occupy Parliament, and we did it without Boniface Mwangi being present. I remember on June 20th, before Rex was shot and before he dispersed from Holy Family Basilica area, I remember us dispersing, and I remember other people trying to speak, and him coming to tell people to disperse and go home. And he was told, no, we're not going home. And the whole matatu was brought in the streets, and we were dancing for the rest of the evening in the streets, while the rest of Rex, and we were running towards Kimathi Street. Rex was shot right at Kimathi Street. And on the other side at Archives, the police, that is not even police in uniform, were actually scuttling people through shooting. And I know, and I met people there, a hawker there who sells by Utawala buses, whose hand was shot. And he is part of the people that this lady called Hanifa took care of. So lots of things happened, infiltration happened, and dissent was meant to silence the youthful voice. So the politicians will always take advantage of that. So if you ask me, this was a blockchain revolution, and we pushed it right to where we needed to, online. And we also protect online.
And for our listeners, Rex Kanyike Masai was a 29-year-old man who was killed during nationwide protests against the finance bill back in 2024 in the center of Nairobi, and he died due to gunshot wounds. But Andrew, let me pull you back in here. We know that Kenya will pay or compensate almost 2,000 victims of protest-related human rights abuses, which was actually set to begin this week. What more can you tell us about this?
Yeah, this is one of the most, I would say, significant developments to come out of the protest movement. So the other day, Ruto announced that the government has set aside about, I think, 2 billion Kenya shillings, if I'm not wrong. That is roughly 15 million USD to compensate the nearly 2,000 victims of protest-related human rights abuses that occurred between 2017 and 2025. So if you listen to what Ruto said, that this is not an admission of guilt, but rather an acknowledgement that harm occurred and that victims deserve recognition and support. This is what we understood. I would say this process of compensation has not been without controversies, because I've heard from some victims groups arguing that not everyone has been included and that some police stations did fail, and this is actually proven. Some police stations failed to properly document complaints at that time because there are so many complaints. So this potentially locked out some victims out of this compensation.
Beatrice, look, not a single security officer has faced criminal prosecution for the deaths during the 2024 and 2025 protests. Why has accountability been so elusive?
Well, I wouldn't speak to why they're protecting the offenders, but I'm sure that the voice of the people is the voice of God. Those people who saw the cameras that recorded the officer who killed Rex Masai, something changed during the court last week. At 1 minute, they agreed and they said that the video that was presented to them by, was it journalists, was admissible in court. We had to do a whole film was done, Blood Parliament. And it's an OSINT kind of a documentary where they pick readily information out there, videos, and they show face for face, they triangulate, they reveal these facial IDs. But the courts are apathetic to our issues as Kenya. The judiciary is captured, the executive is captured, and the National Police Service is captured.
Okay, and of course, we don't have a state voice to rebuttal or give their right of reply to this conversation. So would you say the conditions Kenyans protested against in 2024, the high cost of living, taxation, governance failures, have actually improved, or have they worsened?
So the economic situation is still the same. It's still as bad. I will allude to digital platform workers. These are people who are in the gig economy, and Kenya alone has about 1.5 million gig workers who wake up to make your normal life possible. A cab driver there, someone there, someone there. Internet in itself is a driver of the gig economy. But when you look at the regulations with mobile service providers and ISPs in Kenya, we are seeing a monopoly. We are seeing these people take money out of our pockets through the data bandwidths. So the last mile connectivity is in itself an attack to the youth, and that is why we refuse the digital taxes. While at it, the commodities we were talking about in 2024 were somehow brought into 2025, and those bills split. So who are they attacking? They are attacking the economic base, the national economic base, and it is with us, the workers. Those who are not employed are definitely working elsewhere on platforms. And this is a generation that Ruto has to deal, is targeting and wants to deal with. So he can't continue impoverishing us while he's not creating a proper economic environment for us to work in. So he can't overtax us over a consultancy that you get that will probably be a gig for the next 3 months. So are we suffering? Yes, we're suffering. And how difficult is it for us a bit younger millennials? We're having a hard time coping with the economic situation because these are the foundational years of our lives in our early 30s, like Albert Ojwang. He was a teacher. Did the Teachers Service Commission, did the teachers fraternity in Kenya stand with him? Yes. Did they demonstrate against his death? No. Why? Because at one point, if you're not fending for your stomach, you're looking for how to get connected. If it's not a connection, you're looking on how to add on the hiked fare prices. Because let me tell you, after the government gave that relief to the Matatu sector, to date, the fare prices are still at it. If you were paying 150 shillings to move from A to B, and they took it to 200, they're still at that. So who is suffering? It's the people. We are suffering. But how angry are we? We are angry and we're going to the ballot with it. Is Ruto going to, rig the elections? I am not sure about that, but our numbers will defend ourselves.
Andrew, how have the protests influenced Kenya's political landscape, especially ahead of next year's general elections?
I would say, personally, as Andrew Wasike, perhaps the biggest change is psychological. Young Kenyans no longer see politics as something that happens only during elections. Many now view civic engagement as a year-round activity, and now they have got this debt that is June 25th. The youth who people are saying normally do not vote, do not involve themselves in politics, they become more interested in public spending, in parliamentary votes, things to do with governance, so and also accountability. So we are seeing efforts to convert protest energy into electoral participation. Like you said, next year, people are going to vote. So there have been campaigns urging young people to register as voters ahead of August elections. At the same time, the protests did expose mistrust between young citizens and political leaders. So that mistrust still remains up to today.
Right. Beatrice, and as we come to a close, beyond compensation and commemoration and what we've talked about, what would meaningful justice actually look like for the families of those killed? And is Kenya's institutions currently capable of actually delivering it?
There is no greater compensation. There's no amount of money that will ever pay for the lives we lost. But are the families suffering? Yes. I see Mama Rex going to the courts all the time. She was a person who was working and doing her work. She's a teacher, I bet. If my memory serves me right. She should have been teaching or doing her work. But what is she doing? She's moving from court to court, lawyer's office to another, doing what? Looking for justice for her son. We haven't talked about Denzel Washington and all those that we lost. These are students who their parents spent lots of money to get them to university. The capitation fees are there. They are suffering. So people take loans to take children to school. There's no amount of money that will ever compensate the lives lost and the amount of years they took to raise those children. But can he make it easier for them? He can make it easier for them. And after all, this is our taxpayers' money. It's not his money. So why is he spending on luxury trips? And at the same time, why has he not issued a national apology? What happens is for a national conversation to begin, for a nation to heal after war. Even in old times when people went to war, there was always a day to put down your spears, to venerate the lost souls, to cry and hug each other. After a battle is won, we have to come back and speak. But divide and rule is working, and that is why we are still put on an election. Then after that, we can have a national conversation. Is Kenya in a good space? No, economically we are not, because the politicians have politicized our economic situation. What do we need to do about it? We need to give a person who can work for the people of Kenya for the next 3 years to make things right, just 3 years, so that the thieves in government, emptying those coffers, can stay away from power for a minute.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Beatrice Waithera and Andrew Wasike, for your invaluable input today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me.
To get a better sense of the mood on the ground, let's hear directly from young Kenyans as they reflect ahead of this year's June 25th anniversary.
June 25th is a reminder of what this regime is all about. It is a reminder of when you guys lost the legitimacy to the people of Kenya by killing young people, by abducting them, by torturing them, because of just simply saying no to the finance bill.
Come on Thursday is our greatest anniversary that is about to happen. Celebrate the life of the comrades who died, the young Kenyans who died, rejecting the finance bill 2024. We are coming with flowers. So, you government, you should prepare to give us security.
Kenyans have decided we are all changing our profile pictures to Rex and the other heroes we lost in 2024, in 2025. Everyone we've lost to police brutality. And as Adebalance has said, that's the most non-violent resistance that Kenyans have thought of. One term, Ruto must go. And as I always say, you cannot kill us and lead us.
In 2025, after the Kenyans had protests, there are some Gen Zs that lost their lives. So in this week, the Gen Zs, they are remembering that particular day because it happened on 25th. So actually, they are going to put profile pictures, Gen Zs, those heroes that died, as their profile pictures in TikTok, in Instagram, everywhere. So and that is what is trending.
Just as a remembrance, because we are in that time, we are in that dark month, we're in that time that we remember those who died, Rex Masai, Denzel Omondi, Eric Shieni, David Shege, Erickson Mutisia, and everyone else, anybody else that died during that time, and the few, and the many who disappeared and we've never seen them.
2 years on, The true cost endures in lives lost, families still grieving, and a justice system that has yet to deliver. That brings us to the end of today's show. Thank you for listening. Your voices matter. What does real justice look like to you? Share your thoughts with us on Facebook and TikTok at DW Africa. Listen on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe to our DW Africa YouTube channel. This show was co-produced and edited by Isaac Mugabi. I'm Lucy Riley. Bye for now.
DW. Made for Mind.